Okay, so first off, I'm going to be talking about today the four main branches of society and why this is important. This is important as a more of a historical complex. Some of the future videos that I'm going to be doing, talking about different parts of society and different things going on in society, present time, and even past tense, as far as history. This will kind of help you get the context of how this all makes sense from a perspective of someone that kind of is on the outside looking in, someone that is not necessarily a manager of society, or someone that is in the political system, or even to even understand how deep this actually goes. Okay, these contexts will help you get a base root understanding of where we all fit in society. Okay, at one particular time, I was, pretty much going to school for sociology, and pretty much I was going to be a social worker. A lot of times, people that also go into law to actually become lawyers, they have a degree in sociology. It very much helps them understand the root disciplines of how people are in society, and how people different the different branches of society that I'm going to be explaining. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. And the first part of society is theological. Okay, this is very, very much important. Nowadays in time, this is kind of different, because basically the theological society is very much a section of society that is not really talked about. Like, what is the whole dialogue? Couple things you don't want to talk about. You don't want to talk about politics. You don't want to talk about religion, and then you also don't want to talk about money. Okay, so the thing about it is, from a perspective of just educational purposes, I talk about certain topics, just like this one, to just give someone kind of a perspective of where things are in society. Okay, to help people that might just be kind of don't really have a ground level understanding of society and even sociological perspectives. This will be like a prerequisite to get some type of understanding of where a lot of sections of society is. The theological society, without finishing reading this off here, is very much an old, very old part of society. It is actually, at one time, it was the dominant part of society. As this reads, pretty much the section of society that is based off religious traditions and customs from certain religious doctrines and disciplines. It is the center of society. At one particular time, it was the dominant ruling body in society. What do I mean by that? So if you go back about 500 years ago, to Europe, basically at one particular time, if you were excommunicated, for example, from the Catholic Church, that was very much almost a death sentence, because basically no one will, offer you any type of help. People will cast, judgment upon you. You were pretty much the outcast of society if you were excommunicated from the Catholic Church. It was that much power, almost to a certain extent, opposing power that challenged even large kingdoms, okay, such as kingdom of ancient, not even ancient, but at the time, the British Empire, which was ruled under at that particular time, where uh, King Henry VIII, he literally went against the Catholic Church and formed his own church, which was called the Church of England, and very much against the ruling decisions and power of Roman, Catholic Church, basically in, in Rome at the time, which basically the Vatican is what it was called. He was pretty much in opposition of that, and that was just to state how much power the Vatican pretty much had at that time. Some would even say they still have a lot of power. Okay. And I'll also say that a lot of these different sections where this goes into the rabbit hole is these particular sections that I'm talking about in society, these four main branches, they all intersect, and they all kind of like form into kind of like a cosm, where it's not just like it's just one section and it's just, static. All of these different parts interrelate into one another, and they also form into what is called the modern day capitalistic system. The capitalistic system that we live in today, based off of money and capital, goods and services. These sections of society all interrelate. Okay, such as pretty much churches, synagogues, mosques, temples. They all need money. They all need people to keep these buildings afloat, to keep these traditions afloat. They all, pretty much coexist with one another. So, the theological section of society is very much important. And the reason why it's important is because a lot of the ridicule that people face, as far as, a lot of people that are religious, they look at other people that, let's just say, are not religious, and they're very much judgmental. They're very much, okay. The common word will be a heathen. Okay. Or even some in Islamic the terminology will be a kafir, a kufar, someone that just basically doesn't fit in with those particular religious dogmas or practices or disciplines. Okay, so very much you just got to imagine how many Christians there are in the world, how many Muslims there are in the world, Hindus, Buddhists, Jews in the world. And, pretty much you get the dominant part of how important the theology basically uh, pretty much orchestrates into society. Okay. It's very, very much important. Okay. A lot of people, they don't really understand how important this actually is. This is very much important. It goes back, I would say, at least 5 to 6,000 plus years old. I would even say 10,000 years old. This very much theological part of society. Okay. Moving along, we're going to talk about the underworld. Okay. The underworld economy refers to money earned from illicit activities like prostitution and the sale of illegal drugs. Analysts estimates that the underground economic transactions account for 1/3 of the total economy in developing countries and slightly more than 10% of the total economy in developed countries. So pretty much the underworld is kind of talked about the most. I would even say very much in Black culture in America, the underworld is very much the dominant culture in America. And the reasons why is very much the dominant culture as far as the Black community, as far as Why that is because it's very much orchestrated by, I would say, the narrative of basically record companies, radio stations, basically media. Um, Media pretty much controls and influence this because basically, if you don't have the media influence to, basically, put out certain records and put out certain um, artists and put the context of, underworld activities, such as, let's just say, let's go to right into it. You just want to talk about rap and hip hop, right? Well, rap and hip hop 30 years ago to today is two different types of creatures. Okay, 30 years ago, the rap and hip hop influence was primarily based off of, you had the street element, it was always there, or the underworld element, but then you also had, just basically the rappers that were like kind of like pop stars. Okay, and also, the context of what they were talking about, such as like Slick Rick, when they would, had the song, Hey Young World, and very much, even, basically you would say BDP or KRS-One, You Must Learn, and different, kind of like intellectual rappers. Whereas today you don't really have that much. You want to even say the last 10 to 15, 20 years, it went from the 90s cocaine rap to even now still cocaine rap, and also pills and different types of volumes, and also, more, is in the words of the octane scales, the 85 octane diesel type culture, where it's basically a culture based off of prostitution and, getting money from said sex work, and also getting money from men that are living a fast life. Well, I mean, that's all been before that. That's not necessarily on people of modern times rapping and whatnot, but because that's always been an element of the underworld. The underworld, as this is said, I'll go in more in depth into it. Underworld is a very old. This is probably the oldest form of society. The underworld is very much I would say, the oldest section of society. Before there was any theological society, any definitely organized public government, anything that I'm going to be talking about, as well as even private, okay, sections of society, there was underworld. It was just pretty much, you want to go back to, hunter-gatherer days, you're basically being a savage with whatever you have, arrow, a knife, a dagger, just, whatever you can eat for that day, whatever you can hunt. Well, this kind of, the underworld kind of goes into that. That's why kind of like a lot of the behaviors of a lot of underworld activities is very much from a society where people are kind of disenfranchised. They're disenfranchised from society, whether it be through abject poverty, whether it be through just total disenfranchisement. Because let's just face it, one thing about my channel, I mean, this is definitely a rabbit hole video, or a video that pretty much I really don't talk about too much. And the thing about this is that one part of being on the bottom strung of society that a lot of people don't want to really admit to, as far as Black people, The underworld is pretty much only thing that's left in a lot of cases. When you don't have um, the unity of support for others, you know, you don't have business. You definitely need some level of economic, power or success through unified efforts. And let's just say if you don't have support of other parties that basically don't come into your community to buy your products or services, then also you have your own peer groups that don't support or buy your products or services. Then the only thing left is no business. And no businesses is no employees, and that equals high unemployment rates, high poverty, and basically all of the crime and underworld activities that go with that. That is very much what is going on also in other countries. Okay. Just basically being disenfranchised from the capitalistic system. Okay. Like I said, this is a very old form of, part of society. Okay. The underworld is very much, let's just say, for example, in case you didn't know, Somalia, the country of Somalia, does not have any form of active government. It's pretty much you get down how you can live. Like if you gotta go get a pirate boat and go hijack a ship to make a living, you're gonna have to do it. If you're gonna have to, whatever you're gonna have to do to survive that day, whether it be, try to, go across the border into another country, or whatever means you could do to survive, that is just the government in Somalia. Okay. Somalia, you could say, has an underworld government. Their society is completely, from the government down, is an underworld. Okay. So I mean, that being said, you know, um don't get me wrong, I'll preface this again. A lot of these different parts of society that I'm going to mention, they all dip into one another. Okay. And also, this is why, when I'm going to go to private society, this is why nobody really, in a utopian world, nobody really wants to talk down upon any section of society, because in fear of being an outcast. Because one thing about the underworld, as far as the people that live in particular sections or areas where this is going on, you know, as far as things is concerned, I mean, this is very much uh, a big part of society. And don't get me wrong, don't think for one second this is just in impoverished communities. The underworld is all spectrums of society, as far as all cross economic classes, from upper class to the elite, all the way down to um, people in poverty. Okay, pretty much, underworld is just pretty much people that are doing illicit, illegal activities for a living. I mean, people, you know, uh, do all kinds of things. Some would even call it, they call it System D. Pretty much, you could just say, people that sell anything, whether it be anything unregulated, guns, drugs. It could even be T-shirts. Whatever you could do to just make some money untaxed. It doesn't basically involve any type of tax system or intergovernment interference. That's pretty much the underworld. A lot of even people. All you have to do is watch the American Greed, and you could pretty much see is people that are millionaires, billionaires, that are pretty much involved in the underworld. I mean, Just a few days ago, or I'll just say last week, okay, Bernie Madoff, he literally passed away in prison. He's guilty of basically stealing over $50 billion of his clients' money from basically a Ponzi scheme. And, in particular, at the height of his time, his short career, I mean, well, actually, not even short, long term career, Bernie Madoff pretty much was he was like chairman of the board of NASDAQ, if I do believe. So, I mean, this is across all spectrums of society. This is not just the poor man's section, and that's it. This is pretty much the guy that lives next door to you. If you live in if you have a mansion, I know some of you rich people follow me and watch me. Kudos to you. Definitely the Cashapp is very much appreciated. This person lives next door to you, or this family or this woman lives next door to you, that she lives in the mansion that is worth 1 point something million dollars, but she just she's a drug kingpin, and you just would never know. You never would know. He or she or the whole family just lives a normal life. They barbecue, they have guests over, but they actually are involved in a drug enterprise. This is just, like I say, it's on a small level, and it's on the highest elite level you want to think about. All of these sections of society dip into one another. So moving along, the next part I'll just talk about is public government. Okay, public government is kind of relatively new. The first public governments was actually in Africa. Okay, Egypt. A lot of times people probably that follow me really well, like they wonder why you always talking about Egypt. Well, Egypt was pretty much, you want to say, it was like the Washington D.C. of Africa. It was the basically the ruling government of Africa for thousands of years. Okay, this is where you get the modern day public government system, where everybody pays tax, and all of the things that you see today in society, whether it be from just to remind everyone, where did the Greeks learn how to form a democratic government? They learned that from the Africans, the Egyptians. Okay, they took that. Then the Romans took what they got from the Greeks, and then Anglo-Saxons and the Germanic tribes, and there you have it, took across the pond, and they formed the same type of government system, the federal, state, local government system based off the tax system and public participation and civic duties of citizens. Okay, this is relatively, I would say, this system is probably, I would say, about at the very least, okay. I mean, the European model is only about a couple thousand years old. Okay. So it's fairly new. Okay. Actually, before there were public governments, there were just kingdoms. Okay. I haven't did the video on, basically I'm going to do a video on the evolution of society. Okay. From hunter gatherers on upwards to, kingdoms and stuff like that. Well, before there were public governments, they're just kings. Okay. Kingdoms, but the modern public government is, this was very efficient. It's more based off of what the citizens would really like. what the average public person would like. This is fairly new, but this is basically, you know, very much part of society, and it kind of, it's kind of a central part of society, modern wise and modern in a modern sense. Okay. So I'm not going to go too much into that because you know what public government is. Okay. Now, the lastly point is that the private part of society. This is a part of society that is made up of private, public companies, organizations, clubs, groups, etc. This is the least part of society, but the most impact and concentrated, and most concentrated. Okay, basically, this is very much what people really don't get, how powerful and how very small this group is. In my last year's video where I was pretty much hammering home on the uber rich and the wealthy and the broke and the middle class and people in poverty and the working class. Well, very much so. The 1%. This is where they love to hang out. This is where this is where they stay and go sit down and try to be quiet. Okay, they go into their private world, their private section of society, and they stay there. Okay, they form private and public companies, which is still private. People get confused with words. They say, okay, well, Xerox is a public company. You could buy shares on the stock exchange. But that does not very much mean that, it's part of the public society. No, it's just a private company that went public on the stock exchange. It didn't go public as far as the sense of anybody can just walk up and just be like, okay, well, you owe me something, Xerox, because you're part of the public too. Well, I mean, in a sense, you go down that rabbit hole. That goes in, to a world that I'm not necessarily talking about as far as public responsibility, because very much all companies have some form of public responsibility, even if they don't like it or not, or don't deal with it. But what I mean is that, public companies are still private. Okay. They, have closed board seats, whole closed board discussions, and very much they're still private companies. They're just public on the stock exchange. And, the organizations are definitely, private, in the clubs and the groups. And what I mean by that is basically, you go into the fraternities, the sororities, the, Shriners, the, all of these groups that are pretty much practiced in secret. You want to even call members only. Okay. So like, for example, you could basically even just basically, I could change the name to private to members only. Okay. Because there's pretty much, that's what this part of society is. It's members only. Okay. So you have to be accepted into this, this club, right? And you can get there, by means of, conquest, no doubt, as far as, making money and stuff like that, but you still have to be accepted. That very much goes into the whole, kind of like not being accepted, kind of Johnny come lately thing. Whereas I always go back to the movie Titanic, where you got new money versus old money. Well, new money doesn't necessarily, he or she is not liked by old money. It's like, okay, well, it's nice that you have all of this money, but you still stink of the trailer trash that you came from in the, project pissy hallways. I could still smell it on your clothes. Now, this would be something that somebody that would be in the private society, that they would rudely say to someone that, made the amount of money to actually be near a lot of people in private society that, live these posh lives and live these, very secretive lifestyles and stuff like that. This is what they would say to someone with new money coming in, maybe the most rudest of individuals. But that's just pretty much how they look at people that just kind of, they look at people. This is why a lot of elite people look at people that, kind of come in through the back door, let's just say. They kind of despise them in a way, and kind of they look at them as if they cheated or something like that, because a lot of times there's a process where you pay your dues and you get mentorship, and volunteer, and slowly, gradually prove yourself to the group to be accepted. Well, some people, actually, like I say, went through the back door, and they made their they, way in society. They did the right moves, and all of a sudden they're millionaires. They bought the Millionaire Savings Plan on Amazon, and the Millionaire Next Door. And they all of a sudden they have the capital to actually be kind of in the talks and the conversations of people in the private, group. And it's like, a lot of those people, they kind of despise individuals that have not followed that same path that they have, such as joining groups and clubs and networking and mentorships and all of these other things, right? Well, I mean, that's that, right? But very much this society, this part of society is very much, you want to say, very much trillions of dollars. This is where all of the other groups of society, whether it be the underworld, the illogical society, people that are in public government, this is where they all meet and congregate and sip tea, drink champagne, wine, smoke cigars, put their feet up and laugh and talk about, their regular lives and what they have to deal with and stuff like that. Or, they might, give a little snapshot of what they actually have to, deal with in their, regular world, but they'll come here to just kind of like at leisure, hang out and just shoot the breeze as far as to escape whatever they have to deal with in their daily lives, and very much so. It's some people that their private life is their everyday life. The guy that he has a private office, and he formed his own company when he was 18, and then now he manages $1 billion in assets, for private pension groups, or even the person that his grandfather had oil business back in the 1930s, and then he inherited the business, or the wealth from his father, and then he was transferred that wealth and inheritance. Well, like I say, when I go back to the short game and the long game, these are the people that I'm mentioning that were born in the long game. They don't necessarily have to worry about the short game. They're already kind of riding the momentum of their ancestors, their grandparents. Okay, this is very much where the wealth conversation and even legacy conversation, as far as concerning yourself more about your last name than your first name conversation type stuff goes, where these people are actually living it. Okay, so this is all I have on this. Very much, this is this is definitely something that'll kind of get you to think about in depth of where you fit in society, and where maybe kind of explain um, things and kind of help you understand, it's more to it than meets the eye, So, um, this is definitely more to come with this. So, hopefully you got something from this. If you got anything you wanted to input, definitely don't hesitate to comment below. And yeah, enjoy this one. I will be talking about more of societal topics.